So finally, I just want to say how pleased I am to be working with Councillor Filipaina.
Thank you.
As my extraordinary deputy, Alf and I worked together on the unitary plan, and now we get to work together on this. And nothing's going to be more important to our communities than the work on the ground with some of our vulnerable communities, and Councillor Filipaina has shown extraordinary leadership in that area. We want to work with Councillor Casey and Councillor Collins together and in partnership with their committee. They're the ones who'll be doing the mahi on the ground and making this work for our communities, and to that end I know we'll work together for a really thriving socially, economically and environmentally robust Auckland. So I just want to hand over to Councillor Filipaina for your comments. Councillor Filipaina.
Chair, thank you. And obviously, I look forward, as the Deputy Chair of this particular committee, I look forward for the next 3 years, but also in the same vein, I looked forward to the last 6. And I just want to continue that trend of moving Auckland forward, because from my perspective, one of the best things for us to ensure that no Auckland is left behind as Auckland moves forward. You know, that's one of the key things for us, and I just wanted to acknowledge your leadership in this particular committee, but also over the last 6 years. I do want to endorse the working relationship that we will have with both Councillor Casey and Councillor Collins, because it is important. I mean, when our communities do well, Auckland does well. You know, some of the issues that we will, and you've touched on it, Chair, and that's around homelessness, affordability, and also around protecting our most vulnerable. And Councillor Casey, over the last 6 years, and even before that in the Legacy Council, has led a lot of the work, not only on the ground, but a lot of the work in those respective councils. So I acknowledge the work that you have done, Councillor Casey, around homelessness especially, and again, both of us, as you've heard, look forward to working with both you and Councillor Collins over the next 3 years around that. You know, for me, and I, after this comment, Chair, I will just leave it at that, but the Southern Initiative is one of our projects in the Auckland Plan. The Southern Initiative is so key. It's key because it provides an opportunity to really make a difference in parts of Auckland with significant social and economic challenges. And you know, for us, I think it's important that we do well in those areas, and as a result, that can be mirrored around Tāmaki Makaurau, possibly in the west. But you know, that's a debate and a discussion that we will happen. But I look forward to your leadership, Chair, and again, for me, I'm honoured to be the Deputy Chair of this particular committee. Kia ora.
Thank you, Councillor Filipaina, and I think we're really lucky to have both Jim and Dean and the wonderful staff that we work with. And I just want to pay a quick and public tribute to John Morrow, who I travelled to the C40 summit with. He is an extraordinary member of this council community, well networked, internationally recognised, and I think we will be well served in this committee as we focus on sustainability and our international networks as part of this, to have John working with us. So thank you, John, for the last few days. So thank you all. Mr. Mayor, just wondered, did you wish to make a comment? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and can I begin by congratulating you on chairing the meeting, and Alf as the Deputy Chair of the meeting. When we consider the remit of this committee, it pretty much encompasses the vision of the city that we want Auckland to be. We want it to be, obviously, a city that enjoys a sustainable and pristine environment. We want it to be an inclusive city so that everybody gets a chance, and I think that was Alf's point about the Southern Initiative, particularly with the focus on lifting the school levels and lifting the prosperity of the people in those regions. We want it to be a place where people want to live, and community, economy and environment really sums up some of the critical things that make this a place where we want to live and we want to be proud of. Just firstly on an administrative front, you may be aware the Mayor's Office has been advertising for vacancies, and that includes the Portfolio Manager for Community and Environment. We have shortlisted 2 people and we'll be making that appointment probably today or tomorrow, and that person will then be on board and that person will be available to work alongside officials and the committee. On the critical issues, I think the conference you've just come from, the C40 on climate change, is obviously going to be a paramount consideration. We're 35% of the country's population, so how is it that our city can contribute to reducing carbon emissions and achieving the outcomes that will be imposed on us from the Paris conference? In the environment area, we have the report from Sea Change coming out. I think it's today or tomorrow. Yeah. And that's going to be really important about particularly about the Hauraki Gulf, how we deal with things like siltation that's destroying our marine habitat. How do we restore fish stocks so that people can continue to have access to what many of us have regarded as almost a birthright in being able to go out and catch a feed of fish or shellfish for our families. What will be really important with Sea Change is how we turn a consensus that's been arrived at among the stakeholder group into a program of action that is then implemented by local and central government and the NGOs. I hope that the committee will see at the forefront of its program in relation to both the goals of the C40 and what I've just been talking about, the Million Trees program that I've announced. Planting season starts about May and we want to see some real progress on that. I think we can really mobilise our communities around that objective. Everybody understands the importance of riparian planting so that we can deal with siltation, of having a green and pleasant place to live, of having a carbon sink. I think there's everything going for that program. One of the other issues that I raised during the campaign that I hope that the committee can work strongly on is the concept of a charge for plastic bags. I know there are 1 or 2 sceptics around the table, but I hope you saw TV1 last week, where a poll showed that 78% of New Zealanders were in favour of a 15-cent charge on plastic bags. This is an idea, I think, whose time has come, and if we can be at the forefront of that, either through a voluntary agreement or a local bill in Parliament, I think that would be really important. The last issue I want to touch on is Kathy Casey's area of homelessness. There's not one of us around this table that isn't deeply disturbed that when we walk from the Britomart up to the council building, we generally will go by 8, 9, 10 people sleeping rough in the streets. Or you head up Hobson Street and past the City Mission and see the mattresses that are almost permanently on the ground there. We do need to act in this area. It's about living in a decent city, and it's also about the image of the city that we create, both the reality of the social and human costs of homelessness and the way in which we are perceived as a city if we are not looking after some of our most vulnerable people. And I'm in the process of working with 5 key groups that are delivering services for the homeless. We are working with Paula Bennett, who has put some money up for a program called Housing First. And I hope over this term of council, Kathy, we can make some real progress in this area. That will be one of the benchmarks of whether or not we succeed as a council in making this a decent and inclusive city. So with that, Madam Chair, thank you very much for the opportunity and good luck to the committee for the really important work program that you have in front of you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just to close off, we are incredibly well served by these 2 senior and talented women. I'm blessed with the team that we've got to support this. So, councillors and members, I think if you can't get to Elaine and Tam to help you through any issues, well then they are just unsolvable. And also, of course, to the team behind me. But in the first instance, please support these wonderful women. So here's to 3 years ahead. It's going to be good. So we move on to, which will be the the only two for information items we will have in the 3 years. We've got ATEED and RFA who have kindly agreed to join us, just as a way of, and I'll tell you why I asked. First of all, we have got a few new councillors. It's a really good opportunity to have a look at the work of RFA and the work of ATEED, just to be very clear on who they are and what they do. The issues, however, of accountability and the detail will be dealt with through the Mayor's Committee, and I urge people to focus on those accountability issues through the work that the Mayor will be doing. So can I just invite, who's first? I think ATEED, Brett O'Reilly and team. And David McConnell, our Chair, warm welcome to you.
Well, good morning, committee. Thank you very much, Chair Penny, for the introduction. Thank you to you all for allowing us to come along this morning. First up, I just want to recognise the good work Jenna and her team at the World Masters Games have been doing. I always enjoy her presentation. It's wonderfully energising, and it's going to be an extraordinary event. It has always sit boldly within our framework for our major events. So it's a huge undertaking, and it's great to see them on track. I think the second thing I just want to acknowledge is a new council. New leadership. With that, we sit here as ATEED to take you through a very brief summary about where we're going and what we're doing. And I think up front I condition that with acknowledging the fact that this is a new council. I acknowledge the fact that whatever we put up in is here to be debated under your governance, and therefore will set the direction going forward. So please, in no way, please take this as any type of sort of mandate other than from the fact that this is what we've been going, and recognise that there is some steps, particularly into the new year, and also as we go into the long-term plan of refining our strategy along the lines that you desire. So just want to introduce the board. Norm Thompson, Francesca, Mike, Danny, Helen and Stuart, a great team, great intellect across many sectors of the economy. Mike been a recent appointment to the board. We have the ATEED executive there, many that you'll be familiar with, and providing an enormous amount of horsepower across the organisation, led by Brett. Look, I'm just going to cover off this slide, which is one that a number of you have seen before, some of you that may not, but really is an attempt to really simplify down the model that ATEED is using to advance what we're doing. I think it's important to step back, and it's in a context, in a global context, and it's and taking the pretext that basically it's this global competition for talent. Now, we are becoming a global city, and there is such an intense competition between cities for talent. And I think when you think about the world of what we live in from an ATEED standpoint, that's the cornerstone context for what we're having to compete in. So And when we talk about talent, we're not talking about PhDs from university. In my own business, I talk about great tradespeople who've got the choices to work other places in the world. So it filters right down through all our industry. But, it's the best people in any parts of our industry are now mobile and can go and work in many other places in the world. So from an AT standpoint,